All right, welcome everybody. I'm Dan Quartermanch with Major League Soccer. Really appreciate you joining us today. MLS Cup weekend, 29th MLS Cup. A couple quick things from a housekeeping standpoint. The usual reminder, turn your ringers to off if you could, please. We are also on Zoom, hybrid, post-COVID, we all know that. So we will take a few questions from Zoom. So those of you on Zoom, start raising your hand when we get to the formal Q&A. Standard format, Commissioner Garber will make some remarks. We'll go to the Q&A. And then we'll have fun this weekend. So with that, without further ado, Major League Soccer's Commissioner Don Garber.
Thank you, Dan, and welcome everybody. You know, as I look around this room, there's a lot of people here, and think about how far we've come from the earliest days of Major League Soccer. And I'm going to talk a little bit about stadiums and what this stadium has meant to our league. But I wanted to give a couple of shout outs from what I'll call the OGs that are here in the room. The original OG, I want to congratulate Mark Abbott, one of our founders, who was just notified that he'd be inducted into the National Soccer Hall of Fame. Michael Lewis is here. Michael has covered every MLS Cup other than one, Michael, correct? And so many of you journalists who have been here longer than I have, who've been supporting this game way before Major League Soccer came here to build this sport and lay the foundation for where soccer in America is. And as you all know, our league is a legacy of the 1994 World Cup final here in Los Angeles. That actually was the first soccer game I ever attended at the Rose Bowl. I don't think I've ever mentioned that to anybody. But our foundation at U.S. Soccer was launched as a legacy of the 1994 World Cup. And Ed, I want to welcome you and thank you for everything that you're doing over this many, many years to help build the sport. Thanks, Ed. It's been a really, really exciting season, and it's been a very, very exciting Audi MLS Cup playoff. We've had full stadiums, we've had great audiences, we've had really compelling games. And as we've said from the very beginning, every game in Major League Soccer matters, whether it's in the regular season or it's in the playoffs, and obviously in our championship game. Tomorrow, we wrap up our 29th season with MLS Cup, and a matchup between two clubs, and some of you young people in the room might not know that both teams in New York and Los Angeles made their debut here in LA back on April 13th, 1996, with 69,000 fans who attended that first-year match at the Rose Bowl. And it's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since we last had the MLS Cup here in this spectacular facility, the Dignity Health Sports Park. And it's hard to believe that this was our first true soccer complex. I remember groundbreaking. I remember this stadium going up, and I remember thinking and saying this was going to be a true cathedral for our sport, and it has proved to be that for 21 years. And think about what that means. This week we broke ground on NYCFC's new stadium in Queens, over 10 years in the making. When their stadium, along with Inter Miami's new stadium, comes online, we'll have 28 soccer stadiums that have been built for MLS clubs, which is really pretty remarkable. Tomorrow will be the Galaxy's 10th MLS Cup appearance, more than any other club in our league history. They'll aim to build on their unprecedented 5 MLS Cup titles. I want to congratulate the LA Galaxy, their players, their coach, their staff, their fans, and one of our founders, Phil Anschutz. I want to welcome Will and Tom and the rest of the Galaxy group here. Done a wonderful job, and congratulations on a great season. The Red Bulls make their return to MLS Cup after 16 years, and their roster is a testament to their club's player development process. Regularly, this year featuring 5 starters from the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. And Emil Forsberg, one of the Bundesliga's most celebrated players, an important member of the Sweden's national team, has really played a key role in the Red Bulls' success this year. And I don't know if any of you know this, but over 2,000 Red Bull fans will be traveling here to LA to support their players and their club. And it will be a remarkable environment for a lot of away fans attending an MLS Cup match. And we're looking forward to a great match that will be broadcast for the second year on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV for free, along with our linear partners, Fox, Fox Deportes, TSN, and RDS in Canada. With our 29th season concluding tomorrow, I want to take a few minutes and just reflect on what's been a great year and talk about the exciting things happening in the beautiful game in North America. It's been a great year. We've always been really focused on fulfilling the promise of the sport in the United States, Canada, and this is just another year in how we've delivered on that promise. This year, we'll have the second highest attendance of any soccer league in the world, with over 12.1 million fans filling our stadiums this year. However, the growth extends beyond attendance. Off the field, we set new benchmarks in sponsorship, in consumer products, and digital engagement. This speaks to the rise of the commercial value of soccer in the United States and Canada, which has always been a major focus of ours. I'm pleased to see the growing number of both domestic and international companies that continue to invest in our league and our sport. And as we near the end of our second season with Apple, it's clear that the innovation and the scope of this great partnership has been invaluable in expanding our global fan base. Just a couple of examples. MLS is fully integrated into the Apple ecosystem in maps, in music, in fitness, in news, as well as in Apple Vision Pro. Advanced data is incorporated into every one of our broadcasts. We had a TikTok partnership for a playoff game that had 4 million unique viewers. Tomorrow's game will be televised live in Times Square, all examples of Apple bringing MLS to new audiences. And we're pleased with the results, and fan response has been really positive. Our audience is young, 10 years younger than what we had previously. They are intentional. They watch longer for an average of 65 minutes a game. 90-minute broadcast, 65 minutes our fans on Season Pass are watching our matches. And a key objective when we started in this journey with Apple was to have a fan-friendly and predictable schedule. We had 63 different start dates and times, and today our games are primarily on Saturdays and a handful of Wednesdays. That's been fueling our growth and driving our fan engagement. We couldn't be more excited about the quality of our broadcast. Remember, every game is now a global game, with the terrific MLS 360 in English and Spanish and French in Canada. Think about that. Every game is like our national game, and there's 600 of them. Lastly, we'll premiere an all-access docuseries with box-to-box films on Apple TV next year that's going to offer fans an unprecedented insight into the lives of MLS players that's been taped all season long. So we couldn't be more excited about our future with Apple. And I want to give a shout out to our Apple TV talent sitting here in the audience. Wave your hands. Thanks very much for a long and a very, very hard-working season. On the field, we remain focused on MLS being a league of choice for both elite international players and young domestic talent. We continue to see some of the world's top young players making MLS their league of choice, including the Galaxy's own Gabriel Peck, who is the MLS Newcomer of the Year, and Inter Miami's Diego Gomez. This year, the average age of new international players signing with MLS clubs was 24 years old. And our clubs are already signing more top young talent, as demonstrated by FC Cincinnati setting a new league record transfer fee when they signed Kevin Denke, 23-year-old striker for the Belgian league. He was the top scorer in the Belgian league over the last 2 seasons. And our young domestic players are also making an impact, including the Red Bull's own John Tolkien and Daniel Edelman, Inter Miami's Benjamin Kramaski, and Seattle's Obed Vargas. This season saw the historic debut of 14-year-old future U.S. star Kevin Sullivan, who debuted for the Philadelphia Union. Our player development system is also impacting the U.S. and Canadian national teams as excitement for the World Cup continues for 2026. MLS youth academies are providing 85% of U.S. national team players and 17 of the 18 players on the 2024 U.S. Olympic team. It's a pretty remarkable stat. This summer's Leagues Cup was another great success as we saw more fans attending the tournament, and once again an MLS club brought home the trophy. We're working closely with Liga MX to refine the tournament format. You can wait for some news on that. We expect to have more MLS versus Liga MX rivalry matches than we had in the first two seasons. 3 of those Leagues Cup teams, Columbus, LAFC, and Colorado, will compete in next year's CONCACAF Champions Cup, joining 7 other MLS clubs in next year's tournament. The performance of MLS clubs in the CONCACAF Champions Cup has improved dramatically. We've been very much striving for referential comparison for our teams against Mexico, and I think you'll see that as a major focus for our league in 2025. Looking ahead, as you all know, draw yesterday in Miami, the FIFA Club World Cup will bring teams from around the world to 11 MLS markets, and we're proud to have the Seattle Sounders with a pretty tough draw, and Inter Miami, our record-setting Supporter Shield winner, representing our league. It's a chance for us to showcase our growing competitiveness on the global stage against the world's best clubs in meaningful matches. As you all know, our 30th team, San Diego FC, will make its debut next season, featuring one of Mexico's most accomplished players, Chucky Lozano. We've been looking at this market for quite some time and are really proud and excited to have Egyptian businessman Mohammed Mansour join as an owner along with the Sequan Nation. And they're currently constructing a brand new training facility in San Diego in partnership with the Right to Dream. In 2026, the world will look to North America as we host the FIFA World Cup, with all 13 host cities in the U.S. and Canada located in MLS markets. Over the next 2 years, North America will be the epicenter of global soccer. Our league, our clubs, our players, and our fans are all committed to working together on this path to the world's biggest sporting event. We have an unbelievable opportunity to create this great trajectory and create even more momentum as we continue to grow our sport and our league for years to come. So thanks for joining us. I think my speech was longer than Dan had hoped, but I'm ready for some questions.
All right, for our journalists in the room, raise your hand. We'll go first to one of the deans of MLS Cup, Mr. Steve Goff. We'll go around the room. Those of you on Zoom, raise your hand too. We'll get to you in a little bit, but clearly we're going to go to preference. Steve Goff with the Washington Post. I will say state your name and affiliation, although I just did it for Steve.
Hey, Don. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
With World Cup, as you mentioned, coming in 2026, the calendar obviously is going to be difficult. Is the time come, especially with the climate changing, summer's getting hotter, is it time now for MLS to change its calendar and go to the European-based fall to spring?
Well, you know, it's important to point out that the league in 2004 and 2005, and then again in 2014 and 2015, looked at a schedule change. You know, I think now we could be the only league, or one of only 2 leagues in the world, that works on our schedule. But it's complicated, and I say this to all of you regularly. We're across 3 time zones, multiple weather factors. We're traveling across, a continent, and making those changes is something we've got to be very, very thoughtful about. I do think that we are considering more than ever before this opportunity to change, but it's not something that we're ready to talk about right now, Steve. The schedule does get more crowded. The summers in particular, June now, that has been taken by most of the international tournaments, has us digging in even deeper than we ever had in the past. But we've got a lot of work to do, and that work is ongoing.
All right, so we're going to go to Jeff Carlisle, then we'll go to Dylan Hernandez, Pablo Maurer, then we're going to go in the back. We're going to go around. We got plenty of time. Jeff Carlisle, ESPN.
Over here, Don. Jeff Carlisle with ESPN. In terms of the Apple TV deal, I mean, what can you tell us about the numbers, the subscriptions? And it's been reported that there's a threshold at which the league will rake even rake in even more money once that threshold is reached in terms of subscriptions.
Yeah.
Are you guys close to approaching that?
Well, let me start with, remember, this is a partnership. So it's not a traditional rights fee, it's a partnership. If we achieve certain things together, then we share revenue. Not going to talk about what those numbers are, but it is part of the deal, and it's an important goal for both us and for Apple. I also want to point out that this is a new world for all of us. We have decades and generations of Nielsen ratings, of traditional measurements of how people consume sports. There's a couple of people have a box in their house, and those people have that box turned on, and that's the way we measure traditional linear viewership. As we get into a world of streaming, the entire industry's got to figure out a new metric. Is that metric average minute audience? Is it unique viewers? How could we figure out the right way to compare the audiences that we've had in the past to the audiences that we have now? How important is subscriptions to viewership? To us, subscriptions are very important. Somebody's paying for the opportunity to watch a game, so when they do watch it, it is intentional. That's leading to this 65-minute time that people are spending on our games. But we are very pleased with those the viewership numbers, Jeff. And I'll give you some perspective. And at some point, we and Apple and the rest of the streaming world will figure out a way to come up with some measurement that will become the norm. Every single game, we have 12 to 15 games on a Saturday night. Should we be measuring one game like we were measuring on ESPN? Or should we measure the totality of all 12 games? Is it 12 games? Is it 15? Is it on Wednesday when we have 8? So what is the right comparison? We have over 1 million viewers watching those games on a Saturday night. The collective viewership of those games. We're proud of that. That's way more than we've ever had for a regular season match. We're having more than that watch our playoff games. But I ask the industry, I talk about this at every panel I speak at. We're pleased, they're pleased, it's early, and at some point soon, we're all going to have a measurement that the industry is going to accept, and we'll be the first ones to be happy to talk about it.
Don, right here, right next to him. Don Hernandez with the LA Times.
Hey, Don.
Hey. Last year when Messi came here, I kind of assumed that drove up the subscription numbers. Going forward, in your first 2 years in this Apple deal, what have you seen here that gives you confidence that you'll be able to continue to reach new audiences and grow that subscriber base?
Well, it starts with every game is global, right? So we have this unique opportunity to have somebody in Argentina watch our game, no different than they're sitting here in Los Angeles. And the same quality, the same on-air broadcasters, the same experience, the same high technology, the same data, the same interactivity, the same multi-screen. So that experience for us was a key driver of why we did this deal, Dylan. But it's evolving. Apple's international distribution is evolving. The opportunity for people to consume this on Android devices is something that we're hopeful for. Having people be able to have more access to streaming in these countries where we're developing a lot of our players and signing a lot of players. All of this is part of a process. If I look back as to where we were, we had 60 different start times. We had 28 of our teams with local broadcasts that were scheduled the way local broadcasters wanted them scheduled. And that might mean, or one of our national broadcasters, that might mean in Houston, in the summer, we had a game at 12 noon. That didn't make sense for us, didn't make sense for our players, didn't make sense for our viewers. So we're very much leaned into this idea of destination viewership, intentional viewership, a partnership with a company that understands the customer relationship and is just getting into this business. So we're patient. I don't know how patient the media is, but we're patient and we're committed.
Don Pablo Mero from The Athletic. Just a couple quick questions. The first one, obviously the World Cup, we're pretty much to the day 18 months out from the start of that. And it's being viewed obviously as this huge inflection point. You just spoke about it being a huge opportunity for the league. Do you think the league has done enough to equip itself and its teams to kind of maximize any potential gains for that? I know in the past you talked about, for example, wanting to double the league's fan base by 2027. That's been said. What exactly does that mean specifically? And then just one more quick question: the Club World Cup you mentioned. Do you think that this league's clubs are equipped and ready to really truly be competitive with clubs from Europe, not just clubs from South America?
Well, there's no question when I was at the draw yesterday, and I saw something in the news today about transfer market values of each clubs, and clearly MLS teams are at the lower quadrant of transfer market value, and that's something over time that I hope to be able to see continue to grow as our teams are investing more in players and hopefully generating more revenue to justify that expense. We're working on ways that we can provide each team with some opportunity to be more competitive. We'll talk about that a bit at our next board meeting, which is next Thursday. So stay tuned on that factor. I think it's a very good question on what are we doing on the business side and on the competitive side. And there's been a year work on what kinds of things do we need to do specifically to grow our fan base. What does it mean now that we have a direct relationship with a consumer? How could we lean in better to data? How do we have a more structured infrastructure and investment in that infrastructure for our teams and for our league to be a funnel to collect information about fans and talk to them about what matters to them so that we can convert them from being a soccer fan to being an MLS fan? How could we work with Apple to have more content and other partners like Bleacher Report and OneFootball to have more content that would promote and tell the story about our players, similar to what we're doing with Box to Box. And then we've got to look at our competitive format. Should that change? Should it stay the same? What are we going to do with our calendar? When could those changes be made? Do we have the same conference setup? Somebody will ask that question. I don't have an answer to it, but we're looking at it. Now that we'll have 30 teams, do we have the same playoff format? Maybe we don't. But all those things will go into, a pathway to grow our fan base and make our league more competitive.
All right, the next question will go to Sophie, and then we'll go to Paul Kennedy, and we'll continue. And then at some point, those of you on Zoom, we will get to you. Sophie.
Sophie for TalkSport. Hi, Don. Right here.
Where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, there you go, Sophie. Hi.
Hi. Over the years, it feels like the league has always had to justify itself, not only domestically but internationally as well. Do you feel that the league doesn't have to explain itself anymore and has become more self-explanatory? And secondly, in essence, has it been better for the game that Inter Miami and Messi didn't make MLS Cup? Because tomorrow probably would have been about one player versus two teams.
Sophie, I get asked this question a lot. I get less questions about MLS, its structure, its format, its popularity, its players when I'm outside the United States than I do within. And I just think that speaks to the respect that the rest of the world has for how far we've come. I spend a lot of my time in the international environment. If you were watching the stream yesterday, hearing Yuri Georgiev talk about Major League Soccer and hearing the international media and international soccer football folks talk about our league, it is with envy in some cases and with respect. That is what it is. I have done this a long time, and I do spend a lot of my time trying to explain domestically what Major League Soccer has done, and that probably will change in time, maybe when there's a different commissioner standing at the podium. As it relates to Messi, obviously it's been an enormous phenomenon, more than I had expected, I think more than anybody expected. The away game crowds are more than we would have imagined. The popularity of Leo is remarkable. His love for the league, his kids, his family. We did release the MVP video this morning. I had 250 kids lining up on the Inter Miami Stadium on the field, and Leo emotional. By the way, I did speak to him in Spanish for the first time, and he was really surprised at that. He's remarkable. He's a really, really, really special guy, and we really appreciate the fact that he's in our league. The fact that Miami didn't run all the way through to the playoffs is a testament to the competitiveness of Major League Soccer. We think every game needs to matter. The playoff format is one that we think is competitive. And Miami had a lot of games. They had some injuries, and I'm sure they would rather be here than be watching on Apple TV.
All right, our next question, we're going to go to Paul, and then we're going to go to some of the folks right in front of Paul. And apologies, I don't know everybody's name, but Paul Kennedy, Soccer America.
Hi, Don. Paul Kennedy, Soccer America. In your remarks, you referenced the Red Bulls and their strong, local representation all the year, which will include perhaps tomorrow a record number of homegrown starters in an MLS Cup. But at the same time, despite all the investment of ownership in training facilities and MLS Next programs, there are a lot of teams that have very little local representation, very few homegrown players playing, less so than before. What concerns do you have about that? And I say it partly because you can bring in a lot of foreign players, but it's very expensive to do that in the long term to increase the quality of the league. It's going to have to come from increasing the...
So, Paul, I mean, you've been around a long time. One of the first things I did when I became commissioner was make academies mandatory. And I think is a key driver of the foundation of building the sport. Much of that investment has fueled the ecosystem, college soccer, recreational soccer at an elite level. And I think that's good for what MLS wants to be, which is the driver of the sport at a lot of different levels, including on the field. Every team's got to pick their own path. And Philadelphia has a path that's different perhaps than the LA Galaxy, or might be different than the Red Bulls, or different than LAFC, or different than the Chicago Fire. And it needs to resonate with their fans. It needs to resonate with what they're trying to achieve on the field. And the idea that back in the day, and you remember this, where the MLS was determining what teams looked like and what designated players they had or didn't have, this is all about them. They have to make the decisions that work for them. I do think that we, now that JT Batson and Mauricio, and there's a new leadership at U.S. Soccer, we all need to take a step back and look at the entire ecosystem. What role does MLS Next play? What role do our academies play at what level? We have chief soccer officers like Will and technical folks that are working on the academy level. We have coaches that all get together and talk about this. And frankly, we need to justify what has been over $100 million a year in investment underneath the first roster. And we've got work to do to ensure that that's going to make sense. That's a contribution that Major League Soccer is making to the sport. So, Sophie, to your question, people don't really fully understand what these clubs are doing to build soccer in the United States and Canada. It's remarkable.
All right, our next question, we're going to go to Michael, who is right in front of you, Paul. And then we'll go to Pardeep after that.
Commissioner, Michael Batista, New York Sports Nation, Hudson River Blue. Considering recent remarks by multiple MLS head coaches and front office members, do you think next year, especially with the schedule, with the Club World Cup happening in America, we could be heading to a system where teams have to either be in the CCC, the Leagues Cup, and the Open Cup? Do you think that we're going to have maybe teams playing in only one of those competitions next year versus playing in two or all of them?
Yeah, this speaks to the calendar question. So for somebody who is going to answer it, we will participate in the U.S. Open Cup again next year. We will likely have more teams, and believe that tournament play, if we could manage it with 30 teams, where at least each team is in one tournament, is good for the club, it's good for the fans. We want teams to have an opportunity to lift a trophy. And maybe if some of them could lift multiple trophies, that's a good thing. But it is going to be nearly impossible for all teams to be able to participate in all tournaments. There's just not enough games during the schedule, with or without any change in the calendar.
All right, we're going to go right up front here, and then we'll go to the gentleman right behind you, and then we're going to go to Zoom.
Hi, Pradeep Khatri, CBS Sports. Just touching off of that, I know you mentioned that the Leagues Cup format is going to change. I assume you're not going to tell us what those changes are, but can you get into the reasoning behind why those changes needed to be made, or why you felt like doing that?
Yeah, I think we need more MLS versus Liga MX matches. That was really the point of the Leagues Cup in the beginning. I remember being here for the Super League final, where LA Galaxy was a Cruz Azul, for all you historians. That was 2005. We've been trying to figure out a way to get this right. I think we really got it right with the Leagues Cup. It worked super well in the first year. That was not just about Messi. It was just the way the tournament laid out. And we're looking at modifications that will, I think, make it more focused on what it is that we're trying to achieve, which is this great rivalry between our two leagues.
Thanks, Don. Rob Woolard from AFP. Just touching back on the questions about the calendar, do you anticipate that the league schedule will continue as normal during the Club World Cup and during the 2026 World Cup? And if so, are you at all concerned about any issues of affecting the competitive integrity of the league if there are teams being forced to play league matches when they don't have their full roster?
That's a good question. We will take off for the World Cup in 2026, and we'll take off for a portion of the World Cup in the Club World Cup in 2025. Specifics will finalize sometime at the end of the next week. But for clear, we will not be playing during the 2026 World Cup. We'll take a break in 25.
All right, we're going to go to Zoom now.
Specific break, not a full break.
More to come. We're going to go to Zoom now. We've got Annie Peterson with the Associated Press, followed by Paul Tenorio with The Athletic. We've got Sam Minton in Boston, Henry Bushnell with Yahoo, and John Lupo with Vavel. So we will go to Annie Peterson with the AP up in Portland.
Hi, Don. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. I have kind of a random question. I wanted to, the National Women's Soccer League eliminated the college draft starting this year, and MLS would be inclined to do so given the growth of the academy system.
Was that a question? Will we be inclined to do so, Annie?
Yes.
Well, we've been de-emphasizing the Super Draft since the early days when we had this spectacular show and threw the scarf on so many players. Frankly, I thought those were great historic moments in our league's history. Down to last year, we went to people's homes, and as we sign more and more players out of our homegrown system and have more of these mechanisms for our clubs to sign young international players, I think you'll continue to see a de-emphasis on a specific draft. That doesn't mean we're not going to draft players when they come out of college. I still believe that the ecosystem is important, and I know U.S. soccer is getting more focused on college soccer. I think that's smart. I haven't spoken to Jessica as to why they eliminated it entirely, but for us, we'll still have some form of a super draft, but the majority of our players will come from our academies and from different discovery mechanisms.
All right, thank you, Annie. We'll go to Paul Tenorio with The Athletic.
Thanks so much, Dan. Thank you, Don. Sportico reported just the other day that Liga MX is nearing a deal with Apollo and NFL owners potentially to invest in the league. How do you see that investment and the potential pooling of commercial rights and potentially a media deal as well changing the landscape in North American soccer? And does it put pressure on MLS to change along and grow along with your rivals to the south? Thank you.
Well, again, I think you might know this, Paul. We took an investment from a private equity fund 15 years ago. They bought a piece of Soccer United marketing. We took them out a number of years later. So getting investment is not new for Major League Soccer. It's not new for professional sports leagues. One thing I know for sure that we have among the strongest owners in professional sports. Capital is not an issue for Major League Soccer. How we spend our capital and how we strategically utilize all of our resources is what we spend a lot of our time thinking about. So I don't believe we need to go out to the markets necessarily to raise capital for any purposes unless we deemed it was something that would be strategically important. Liga MX has been on air in our country since way before Major League Soccer. They just went about it differently. So I don't know that much is really going to change. We have a great partnership with Juan Carlos Rodriguez. We help them with the organization of their new structure because it mirrors very much what MLS is all about, particularly when we own the rights for U.S. soccer. I think it's going to lead to more cooperation between MLS and Liga MX as opposed to less. So not at all concerned about it. I'm optimistic, and I think it's a positive step for the sport.
All right, our next question will go to Sam Minton in Boston with the Blazing Musket. Sam?
Hello, Don. Thanks for taking the time. Out there in California, there's a certain team that has a new head coach, the San Jose Earthquakes and Bruce Arena. I'm wondering if you could kind of give any detail or clarification on the process he went to be able to coach again, and any possible findings from MLS's investigation.
No, I appreciate the question, but it's not something that I'm going to talk about. Obviously, Bruce would not have been approved to coach in Major League Soccer if he didn't satisfy whatever standards and whatever things that we wanted him to satisfy. So much more than that, I'm not going to comment.
All right, we'll continue on Zoom with Henry Bushnell with Yahoo. Henry?
Thanks, Dan, and hi, Don. Appreciate your time. You said earlier that you guys are working on ways to provide teams with more opportunities to be competitive, in the global context. Are there plans or possible plans pending board approval to make significant changes to the player spending rules or caps this offseason? And if the answer is that you can't answer until after the board meeting, I guess more generally, have there been any significant shifts over the past year in the thinking on whether or not to accelerate the player spending?
No, I wouldn't, Henry, say it's significant. There's discussions going on. I wouldn't put it in the category of significant. MLS is constantly, every year, looking at ways that we could incentivize our teams to, use their resources better, to be very, very productive and efficient. We're in the middle of a collective bargaining agreement with the MLSPU. We've got a great relationship with them, but I don't anticipate anything significant happening in the next couple of years.
All right, we'll continue on Zoom with John Lupo, followed by Alex Silverman. Then we'll bring it back into the room for a few additional questions. I believe we've got some folks in the back, so we'll turn it over to John.
Don, with San Diego coming into the league next year, just two-part question. Number one, what are your expectations for them? What do you feel they bring to the league? And with the success that St. Louis had in 2023, Charlotte's franchise is coming along nicely. Austin, within the first 2 or 3 years, made the conference finals. What do you think should realistically be the expectations for them as they prepare to enter their first MLS season?
The expectation we want the most is for them to be relevant, to them to matter with a new fan base, to have an exciting brand, to get that stadium rocking, to spread the energy of Major League Soccer south of these two great teams that we have in Los Angeles and getting closer and closer to the border. So when I look at these things, I look at them broadly. I want the team to be exciting. I want people to be paying attention to them. And that's going to be up to, Mohammed. It's going to be up to Tom Penn and the rest of the group. But we've had great success launching leagues. I expect we'll have great success with San Diego.
All right, we'll continue. Final question on Zoom. We'll go to Alex Silverman with the Sports Business Journal. Then we've got some folks in the back there, and we'll round it out. Alex.
Hi, Commissioner Alex Silverman from Sports Business Journal. You talked a little bit about with the Apple deal, kind of your core fans who are tuning in, being more engaged and being more intentional. How do you feel being primarily on a paywall service has impacted the league's ability to reach casual fans and kind of introduce more people to the product?
Well, what we have really is a communication problem, Alex. We have 6 to 10, 12 free games every week. And we're not doing a good enough job letting people know that. We have more free games available. All you need is an internet connection. You can download the app anywhere in the world and you can get games. So I think we have more exposure, free games exposed now than we did prior. Right? You had to have a cable subscription or you might have to buy a sports streaming subscription. This is new. And we've got to work with Apple, we've got to work with our clubs, and we've got to work with our partners to get more and more exposure to what we think is a great product.
All right, our next question, I believe we were going back to the second to last row, if I'm not mistaken. No. All right. We'll continue around the room. We'll come right up here, Justin. Gentleman right here next to Steve Cangelosi. And apologies. That's Jerry Hawkins. That's bright lights. Sorry, guys.
Don, Jerry Hawkins from Kicker Magazine. With the 30th year approaching, I know you weren't around since the very beginning, but you've been in charge for the vast majority of these years. You've seen the coming of Beckham, the coming of Messi, but what to you has been the most significant thing to have happened in this league in your time to bring it to where it is today?
Well, I'll tell you a fun story. We were taping something, I don't remember what it was for. Doug Logan was in the office, who was the commissioner for the first several years. And Doug said to me, Don, even though you've been the commissioner for 25 years, I was the commissioner for 3 or 4, and I could have gotten my degree in nuclear engineering, and I could have piloted a nuclear sub, but nobody would ever think that I knew anything about soccer or that I should be the commissioner of a professional soccer league. So it has been a long journey over these 25 years. And when I came in the very beginning, the goal was to build a soccer nation. You know, we talk about our brand all the time. It was a league for a new American to build a soccer nation. To me, those are the things that I care the most about. Were we a league that offered something different than the other leagues here in the United States and Canada? I believe we are. Have we built a soccer nation? I believe we have. You know, I have seen the rest of the world come to our shores to develop players, to get sponsorships, to play games, to capture the energy of everybody in this country that over the last 25 years has become a fan. And I think MLS has been one of the key engine drivers of all that energy. I also thought from the very beginning that some of the original guys, I don't know how many of them are here today, Tab and Alexi, and they came back to John Harkes, they came back to Major League Soccer, and they played and they didn't have jobs. And today we have hundreds and hundreds of players that are working in the league, if not 1,000. We have a bunch of folks sitting in the back of the room that played in Major League Soccer, and now we're earning a living as a broadcaster because of our league. And that probably, to me, is the most exciting aspect of that, not the least of which is thousands and thousands of employees that are basically making a living because Major League Soccer is their company of choice. That's what I think is, for me, what I care the most about. I'll be doing it for a couple more years, and then I look forward to the next guy or woman sitting up here and taking all your questions.
On that note, that's an excellent way to end today's press conference. Journalists really appreciate you coming
Thanks
out.
for your
Those
time.
on Zoom, we
Have
really
fun
appreciate
tomorrow.
it. Enjoy this weekend.